But until you learn that life happens from the inside out and it's not happening to you, you will continue to live a life and perpetuate a story that's keeping you stuck in a place that you're not deserving of. If we were to wipe our minds completely clean, we would have no fear of what's going to happen because we have nothing to base that on. When you claim something greater for yourself, when you claim that you want a deep and loving relationship, life has to show you what that isn't, because it's a test. To really know what you want, you have to know who you are. A human in the now, a human truly in the present, right now, is the most powerful human being, because they're not in resistance to anything. They're not, I should be here, I should be over there, this is gonna happen when. You're everywhere else but here. You're literally everywhere else energetically but here.
We've got the Lilly show today, which I'm so excited about. I don't think I've ever had another Lilly on. I came across one of your TikTok videos. I think it was the one of, like, if you want to have the best week of your life, like, here's how to think about things. Here's how to not be bothered by those around you, which we'll get into because I love that idea. But yeah, immediately I was like, I got to connect with this girl. Like, I feel like we have so much in common. We're talking about very similar topics and seems like we have similar passions. And, upon actually having a conversation with you, it sounds like you also have been really impacted by Peter Crone's work. And so I'm super excited to dive into all things rewiring, subconscious healing, rewiring our self-concept, and just learning how to really move through life in a more conscious and empowered way. That I think is the journey of self-discovery and self-development that so many people are on, especially those listening to this show. So I want to pass it over to you, say thank you for coming on, and tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Yeah. So first, thank you so much for that intro. I'm also super excited. We both have two first names. We're both Lily. I mean, we're off to a great start. And yeah, we totally connected over a lot of the same frameworks, which is super powerful. And I think anyone that really starts to dive into those frameworks really gets and grasps a new lens to look at life. And the work that I do, I actually got into my work through yoga philosophy. So that's essentially what all of the frameworks that I really studied, that's what all of the kind of undercurrent is this sort of yoga philosophy of union, of yoking, of merging. And it's this natural flow, right? Our natural state is to be merged. It's the maladaptive self that we've believed we've had to be or have had to adapt it into that has caused us to be separate from that. And the work that I do is essentially that, like recognizing what are the things in between you and your natural state of everythingness. And I love learning so much more about that. And so much of my greatest teachers and mentors have shared that same framework, which is why I really have been drawn to Peter Crone and also Michael Singer. They are so huge. They've been super pivotal in the way that I've been able to articulate myself and to explore different ways because we're all saying the same thing. We're just flipping it a different way, a different narrative, a different way that we word it. And it's so powerful because everyone's unique spin on it can hit you in a completely different way. And it's so powerful to take a human being who's in front of you and for them to realize that the only thing in between who they are and who they want to be is the language they use around their belief system. So to help people move through that and literally watch them just become a different person, step into new reality, into a new world, it is the greatest thing. And I feel so grateful to be able to do that and for that to be my career. So that's a little bit about what I do.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, to me, It's just like the most, the most rewarding experience is I call it like the little like light bulb that goes off in people's eyes and in their minds when they suddenly see something from a different perspective that quite literally liberates them from something that has been trapping them for so long. Like Peter Crone talks about these constraints, these mental prisons that we get caught in, that are literally made up of words. And that doesn't diminish the power that they can hold and how trapped it can feel to actually be stuck in stories that are limiting, right? To think that we're not enough or not safe or not loved or whatever it may be. But when you do break it down, it is simple in the sense of it is self-created at some point, and that gives us the power back to actually free ourselves from that and become the people we want to become. Before we dive into all of that, I would love for you to share just a little bit about your story. Like, how did you find yourself on this path of healing, of the mindset, subconscious work, and rewiring your own self concept?
Yeah. And I think it's really funny whenever I get asked that question, it's this whole rewind of just everything. And I say, oh, it started here. And then I'm like, wait, actually, it started here. And I think the moment that I really woke up, and I've shared about this story, actually not so much publicly on my own podcast. I've shared them in the past, but I grew up in a very abusive household. I'm one of 7 kids, and my mom had a really tough upbringing. And so much of the work that we do and what we know is that we learn the language of the family that we go into. There's no other language that we would know. Which, if we know the language of scarcity, we're going to operate in the world through the language of scarcity. If we know the language of earning love, we're going to operate and act in alignment trying to earn love. And these are through sort of the lenses that most human beings fall into, which are, inadequacy, that our needs don't matter, lack of safety, I'm not going to be okay. There's all of these really fundamental lenses. And I was taking those on, and I had been repeating patterns because that's what I knew. I was in an abusive relationship. I was partaking in behaviors that were really not in alignment with what would have brought me a more fulfilling life. But we can only change what we are not oblivious to. And I was completely oblivious. And I was in a really abusive relationship I got into the relationship when I was 16. And I actually had my first suicide attempt when I was 18 years old. And this was something that really was a moment for me to say, wow, okay, you're in a really deep place, a really dark, deep place. And things kind of continued. And then I had been continued in that relationship, and I had a near fatal overdose with my partner at the time. And that we had broken up right after that. And that breakup was something that woke me up to this pattern of saying, if you continue down this line, you're either going to end up in jail or you're going to end up dead. And I just thought to myself, there has to be more to life than this. There has to be more to life than all the pain, all the stories, all the victimhoods, whatever I was living by. And of course, I had every story to support the life that I had. I had every piece of evidence to say, well, this is why my life looks like this. And you get to a point where you ask yourself, do I want more than this? And I started playing rugby. This was something that really changed my life, opened me to new community. I had gotten into this is way down the line, but I was starting to play rugby overseas. And my roommate gave me this book, and it was Many Masters, Many Lives by Brian Weiss. And it's a fantastic book. And she was the one that got me introduced into Joe Dispenza. And there was a book in Spanish that I found, and I was like, well, let me get the English version. And I started reading it. I started doing meditations, and it had just brought me down this entire path. And one thing led to another. I actually went to school for social work psychology, ended up changing my career path. And now I'm a coach teaching the very things that I've learned and moved through. So little compression of that story, but I would say those are the pretty big pivotal pieces. And of course, there's other ones sprinkled in there. So
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I just think it's so powerful to share a little bit of our own journeys, because it's always like that. The people that are most passionate and end up doing this work to help others, it's because of our own, pain to purpose story, if you will. And what was coming through as you were talking about that book landing and the meditations and such is just, it's like when the student is ready, the teacher appears. There's something about that shift. I was going to ask you, like, was there a moment that really changed things for you? But you already explained that. And it's so powerful because to me it shows kind of the cascade of creation, how things unfold, where it's first there's a shift internally and then the external starts to reveal itself and to show us the path forward, right? And so let's go into that a little bit in terms of, especially because I know you like to talk a lot about rewiring your self concept. And so that being kind of the beginning of the cascade that I just mentioned, right? It always does start with us, something within us shifting, even if it's just that slight perspective shift, the way we see things. And then that starts to create the whole chain of events that follows and allows us to actually change our lives little by little. And so, what does rewiring your self concept mean to you? And why is that such a foundational piece of this work?
For sure. Rewiring your self concept is one of the greatest gifts I believe you can give yourself, because it is quite literally stepping into a whole nother world that you didn't even know was possible for yourself. Because we are linguistic beings, like we said, we learn the language of what we are born into. Like I said, we would have no other way to know how to operate with the world. So we create these limitations and these beliefs of what is possible, of who we believe we are. We hold ourselves back from going for certain things based on what we've been shown is possible, what we believe is possible. It's been spoken to us about how the world works. Now, rewiring our self-concept is actually going back to the root. First of all, recognizing what are your limitations. So we have to understand what's the world that you live in. And we can do this by listening to how we speak about our story, which is how we speak about who we are, what our story was, is so powerful. It can literally grant you freedom. If you can learn to really recognize how you are caging yourself in with the words that you're using. And this is why Peter Crone's work is so profound, because all he's doing is having a conversation with someone. He's not doing anything. And he's helping people recognize the constraints are literally used through sound, which is wild. When you really understand that, it is wild. So getting down to rewiring your self-concept is recognizing and being honest with yourself, right? This requires the deepest level of honesty and your ability to look at the truth, not what you need life to be so you're okay, but the actual reality of every choice you've ever made, of how your life is reflecting who you are, and being okay with not knowing what's next, because the only thing you know is right here. And when we go back to the root of who we are, it's actually taking a look and having the deepest form of love and honesty with ourselves of what have we believed has been possible. Because what is shown to us in that moment and why we're so afraid of that is because we recognize that actually all along it's been a choice. Were we aware that it was a choice? No, a lot of the times, most of the times we're not, until we're aware of it, because that's when you step into the potential and the true power of what it means to be a human being, is that you are in co-creation with life. But until you learn that life happens from the inside out and it's not happening to you, you will continue to live a life and perpetuate a story that's keeping you stuck in a place that you're not deserving of. So rewiring that is literally getting back to the essence of who you are, the truth of who you are, which is vitality, which is abundance, which is love, which is peace. Because it's not searching for these things. It's the removal of the search and realizing that everything that you could ever need is right now. And the only problem you ever had is you believed you had to do something to get those things. And that's what rewiring and getting back to your self-concept is. It's a true merge with everythingness. It's the yoking. It's the openness to what is and allowing life to just flow through you. It's in a state of pure surrender. But the constraints are the resistance to what was, what is, and what you think is going to happen.
Beautifully put. Yeah, and it really is so interesting how, because we talk about rewiring limiting beliefs, and that's a big part of the work too. But even before that, Peter Crone talks about this as well, but it's just like at the bottom of all of it, like you said, at the root of it is that identity part that we're unconscious to until we start to dig. But that really sits at everything, because it's who you think you are for yourself that then influences, the beliefs that you hold at a deep subconscious level, what you think, then how you act, how you behave, the actions you take, and then, so on and so forth. And it really is so powerful, because when you can get all the way back to the root and think about and see and reverse engineer of who do I think I am in order to behave and allow certain things to happen and not take action in certain areas, that is very revealing. And it can be challenging to look at, but that's actually also what allows you to then make changes in your life. And like you said, realizing how all of that is learned behaviors, and we have evidence for it. And so this is what I want to, and I say put evidence in quotation marks, because we think it's evidence, but it really isn't, besides us saying it is. And so that's what I want to get into next. And I'd love for you to unpack a little bit about this what humans do unconsciously, again, of fighting for their stories and using the past as evidence to continue to reinforce who they think they are. Why do we do that? And how do we start to break that?
Yeah. So we'll start with the first question of why do we keep perpetuating these stories that don't feel good? Why do we keep living in this victim story, this victim mentality, choosing a life that doesn't feel good? And there's a couple of things. And I think there's a couple of different ways to look at this. So one, the brain is designed to predict and protect. And if something is known to us, we're able to assess it and really take a look at it, right? So if we even let's say for a bad relationship, okay? Let's say someone is attracting someone, they say, I keep attracting people who are avoidants, okay? That's a really big one. So what the story that they tell themselves is that there's something wrong with them, right? Because there must be something wrong with me, because it's actually the lens that they're looking at it. And they say, well, there must be something wrong with me. And they're actually bringing in these people who are showing them where they're not free. But what human beings do is they blame them and they say, oh, life is happening to me. Because the core belief is that there's a sense of inadequacy, or or whatever the lens is, right? Because that's what they've known. And when we have a history of what we've known, it's predictable, right? We know how to interact with it. We know, even if it doesn't feel good, we know that that's something that we can get through. We know that that's something we can handle because we've done it before. And we'll be doing this unconsciously, right? We'll be bringing these partners, and it's also from a level of worth, right? This is what we believe we're worth. And there's a lot there's so much depth we can get into here, but essentially it's just this repeating of a pattern that we know and we can predict, and that is known to us. Now the scary thing is stepping into what would life look like if I were to say no and respect myself to these relationships and say yes to something greater. Because when you claim something greater for yourself, when you claim that you want a deep and loving relationship, life has to show you what that isn't, because it's a test. So it's going to bring you someone to say, do you really want a loving relationship? Do you really want someone who's going to choose you? Do you really want someone who's going to love you? And are you going to allow them to see you? Here's your test. And what happens is, because it's known, we say, oh, well, we're not doing a lot of this consciously, but we say, oh, this is what I'm used to. This is what I know. Or it's a little piece. Normally with those relationships, it's that need to be wanted. It's that need to be chosen. And they would rather choose the need to be chosen than to choosing themselves, release someone who is not actually the deep, loving relationship that they're calling in, be by themselves and be open and trusting. Because the real thing is there's a lack of trust. Because when we're not able to choose a life that is greater than us, we don't believe that it's there, because we don't believe that we're worth that. We believe to a fundamental level that that's what we're worth, because we can look back at our history and say, well, that's all that I've known. This is what I've been shown that I'm worth. Look at all the reasons why I'm not good enough. Look at all the reasons why I'm not lovable. Look at all the reasons why I have to show you, why I need to prove to you why you're able to love me. So we use it as evidence because it feels safe, because we don't feel safe to step into loving relationship, because the reason we put on that mask, the reason we created that constraint, the reason we created that belief is because we were open to love at one point. We were vulnerable to love at one point, and we were hurt. And now we go through life trying to avoid that same hurt. But all that we're doing, trying to avoid the hurt that we don't want, the only person really hurting is ourselves. So we perpetuate it. And that is a thing that we get stuck to, or the cycle we get stuck in, because we don't know anything more. And this is why spiritual awakening, or a moment when you wake up, is so important, because you go, oh my God, what is going on? And it's usually, and people say it's like God's hammer coming down. Something intense happens in your life, because I don't know what you believe in, but source, God, the universe, wants it to work out for you, wants you to move through the lesson. That's why we came here, to evolve, to grow, to expand. And those lessons are being shown to us because it's saying, I want you to transcend this, because you came into this life trying to transcend some soul thing that you are meant to move through. This is what I believe. I don't know who's listening to this and what you believe. This is what I believe, which is why we're born into the certain families that we are, which is why we have the certain situations that we have, because we would not be able to move through and learn and find that within if we were not shown that situation. That is literally the test. That is the soul expansion. And we get stuck in that. And then life will be like, okay, they're not getting it. We got to wake them up. Give them something. What's going on? Okay, now then we recognize, oh my God, I've been choosing this. And that's where it becomes scary, because that's when the trust comes in of saying, well, I don't see it in front of me. And this is where we look for where life is reflecting back to us, where it's going to be easy, where it's going to feel safe, where it's going to feel like the path's not going to be there. The path, most of the time, when you're making big change, not going to be there. It's not going to feel safe, because anything outside of what you know is not going to feel safe. Quite literally, because you don't know it and you can't predict it. So that's why we stay stuck and we say, okay, well, once it's like this, then I'm going to feel that way. Because what we're doing is we're putting time between us and what's actually us. So we make it not exist for ourselves. So then we go through life trying to achieve it, trying to do all these things to spark those feelings inside of us, which is why things are momentary there, and then you're on to the next thing, because when have you forgotten what you wanted and then you never wanted anything ever again? So that's the real big piece. And then we go through that, which is why people are stressed, which is why people are burnt out, because they're fighting against the reality of what life is giving to them. It's handing them the opportunity right now, and they say, I'm not ready for that. I'm going to do it in this way, because this is actually what matches the messed up garbage that's going on in my head that makes me feel safe, which is not actually. And then we get there and then we say, well, why don't I feel fulfilled? Because we don't believe that it's right here. And that's why, and I'm going on a totally different tangent, but I feel like this will all come back together, but it's all happening for you. And when you can be open and say, the gift is actually in front of me, I just don't believe I'm worthy of receiving it. And I believe I have to work hard, or which we do have to work hard, but we have to push ourselves or drain ourselves or suffer to get there, because of the story we tell ourselves of why we can't have what's being offered to us in every single moment.
Yeah. And the predict and protect mechanism is so important, like you mentioned at the beginning, because our minds are based on, like, they're trying to keep us alive, right? It's a survival mechanism. And so that's what you said too, like the uncertainty of stepping into a future that you don't have evidence for, that you don't have tangible proof of yet, feels uncertain and scary. And I think a lot of people end up reverting to old patterns because, like you said, that is the familiar past that becomes, it's like we would rather hang on to what is predictable, even if it's hurting us and it's making us suffer, because at least we will know what to expect, right? We've been there before. And so that does become these self-fulfilling prophecies that we can get so trapped in until, yeah, I feel like life gives us a whisper, our intuition gives us a whisper, and then it gets a little bit louder and a little bit louder. And if we still don't choose to have the courage to look at that and make the changes, then we end up getting hit, because life's trying to help us. I believe that too. I really believe we're here for our own liberation, to move past the constraints with which we arrived, thinking that we are somehow less than or incapable of what we desire and who we really are. And so from that point, right, let's say that someone has the awareness of, wow, I can see what my patterns are. I can see where I'm still holding myself back. What, in your perspective and in your experience, are kind of the next steps from there? And if you want to give us a personal example of something you overcame, or a shift that you made of some, like, a pattern that you just thought was who you are. Because I think that that's where a lot of people get stuck, and myself included sometimes. It's like, I can see the pattern, but how do I actually change it? how do you actually move through that uncertainty and create a new self-concept?
Yeah. And this is what I base all of my work around, right? There's this world that's calling us, right? This greater version of ourselves where we say, I know I want to change this. But yet we revert back to these old patterns that feel comfortable and that are known. So what we have to get really clear on, and for a lot of people, if you ask them this question, what do you want? Not many people can actually answer that. So the thing is because when the world tells you no over and over and over again, because we are repetitious beings, we create these rules. And when we are not allowed to create a life that we want because we're told all these rules in life, we start living by them. And if we don't know what we want, how do we know where we're going? How do we know what life we actually want to create? So it can actually be this feeling of being stuck. And this is what I hear a lot from clients, that they feel stuck, but they want to get to that place. So not only do we have to get clear on, well, what actually is this feeling of stuck for you? Because it actually is a very vague thing, right? Because a lot of it, normally it's from fear, it's from anxiety. And what I normally hear is that they believe that there's a right and a wrong choice moving forward. And they want to do everything to avoid the wrong choices and make sure that they do everything right, which is where we fall into perfectionism and where we fall into anxiety and all. This is why we all really experience that in some way, because we're afraid of, and a lot of this comes from people pleasing or whatever the constrainer story or family situation you grew up in. It's always about that your needs don't matter, right? If we don't know what we want, I really believe every person who truly doesn't know what they want to some degree believes that their needs don't matter, or they haven't mattered, or they've placed everyone else above themselves. So to really know what you want, you have to know who you are. Because how are you going to know what you want if you don't even know who you are? So we have to start recognizing, all right, this is where we get into the world and saying, what's the world that you live in, right? Because if we take away the parts and we start removing the fallacies of who you're not, the natural you's there. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to find the you. We have to remove the parts of you that aren't you. So it's kind of like a sculpture. There's a big rock there and you're in there. And all of these maladaptive behaviors are the rock on the outside. And we just got to start chipping away and recognizing the parts that are not you. Because once you are there, you are connected. You are in everythingness. This is a practice. This is something that we do every single day by showing up for ourselves. And I'll talk about that in a moment. So about removing that. And once you get there, then you can say, beautiful. What is it that I want? Like, really, if there were no rules in this life and I could create whatever I want, wink, wink, we can do that. You can create whatever life you want. What would that look like? If I have the freedom to choose, what would I choose? If I were to create a life from my highest excitement, from passion, from love, from conviction, from knowing, what do I want? Now, that's going to be a very different place than a lot of people create normally, trying to avoid a future they don't want, or trying to make things or create things based on what other people have told them are okay or what they believe is safe. So getting back to that place. So again, recognizing the stories, recognizing the limiting beliefs. And then we start recognizing the incongruency of who you want to be and who you are now. Because the key into that person, the only thing is action. Because action is the precursor to frequency. And everything is happening right now, right? Like we've been on this call for 35 minutes or so, but we've never not been here right now. We've only been here in the now. So everything that you're actually desiring is only available right now. So getting clear on what is it that I believe is on the other side of achieving something? What do I believe is on the other side? Or also, what does that person feel? How do they move? How do they interact with the world? How do they relate with life? There's different ways to connect and get into that. And it's about, why don't I feel that right now? What's in between me and that? And a lot of the times we try to think our way into that, which is where we get into analysis paralysis. We end up not doing anything. We also feel stuck because we're trying to think our way into that. We're trying to feel safe. We're trying to rationalize. We're trying to intellectualize. And this is why people say do it scared, because the only thing that's truly going to give you clarity is action. And we have to get clear on what would that person do. Right. We're going to come with a list of what that looks like, what they feel like, how they move, what they do, what's important to them, what's their values. And we start right now. What is one thing that that person does? And you stick with that. And you're going to notice the stories are going to come up. The limitations are going to come up. The triggers are going to come up. That is your work. And you do that over and over and over again. And here's the thing about that is it gets boring and it gets monotonous, because success and becoming that person is not just one big grandiose moment. It's not this big thing that happens. It's all of the mundane, because human beings are beings of compound interest. We're not just, it's like you're not just one day of healthy eating. You're not just one night out. You're not just one day of hard work. You're all the years of every choice you've ever made, every decision you've ever made. That is who is sitting. That's who we're sitting across from right now. The Lily that is looking at the other Lily, we're all the decisions and actions that we've partaken in. And until we can accept that, and we can be at peace with that and hold every version of ourselves that we're doing the best with what they knew, and just hold it. Doesn't mean we have to be okay with it. Doesn't mean we have to say that you would definitely make different decisions. And that version of you doesn't need shame or guilt. It needs to be held, needs to be loved, needs to be accepted and broadened and integrated. And until you can make space for every version of you that has led you up to who you are right now, you are not fully integrated, and you're not in the moment. You're not now, you're not in presence, which is the only place any change and any action can ever be taken. And once you feel safe to be here and you get clear on where you're going and you take that action step every single day, build on that, recognize the triggers, all of that, your world drastically changes, because you are literally open to everything. You are open to pure possibility, and you are open to that version of yourself, and you bridge that by action.
How would you help someone who feels like they're unable to accept the past, right? Because you just mentioned that, and I agree. I think that it's the resistance to what is or what was that keeps us from actually creating change in our lives, and recognizing, that each moment is brand new, but it's what we carry with us that is that heavy baggage that then becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy of what we create more of. How do we actually come in? Because there's a lot of people that I've talked to that really struggle with accepting what was, or past versions of themselves, or what they have done, or what happened to them,
That is a huge one for sure. And I think I can relate this to a question that you asked as well, of what I've moved through with that. And I think the big overarching theme with that is surrender, right? It's really surrender to all of it. Because the only thing that creates pain in our life is our resistance to feeling, which is what suffering is. Because once you remove the resistance, all there's left to do is feel. And when we can't accept the past, we haven't integrated it. We haven't allowed it to be a part of who we are. We are still shaming that part. We're still guilting that part. We're still making that part of ourselves less worthy. We're picking and choosing what parts of us are allowed in this present moment. And for that, if we can accept something that we did, we say that part of me isn't allowed here. That part is shamed. It's thrown in the closet. It is pushed to the side, and we're going to move on. We cannot fully step into that full version of ourselves unless we are fully ourselves right now. We don't get to pick and choose what parts of us go with us. So the big piece is recognizing how is the way that you relate to your story, and connecting to each version of themselves. And this is something that I've done personally, is going back and really sitting with myself and saying, where do I still find shame in my story? Where am I still guilty of where I've hurt people? Where am I still guilty of decisions that I've made? Where am I still saying I should have done this? What would have happened if I did this? Where would I be if I did this? All that's doing is not allowing me to be here fully, because that is still running the show, because I'm still running from that. I'm in a state of dis-ease because I'm not okay with it. So sitting with those versions of myself and really feeling into, because they're there with you. You can tap into them for sure. And saying, that version of myself, what was she feeling? What was she going through? What was her experience? Because you were there. You can tap into them and you can connect to them and be with them. Like no one else was. You can be the one to be with them. Because that version did not need shame and guilt. That version needed love, it needed care, and it needed safety. Because the only reason we act in any way to hurt someone else is because we're experiencing that as well. And to whatever degree. I'm not saying to condone bad behavior. There are really horrible things that happen. And to understand how human beings react to life is because they're reacting to their own suffering of what's going on inside of them. So when we can go back and we can understand and really sit and hold ourselves, we don't have to be okay and cool with it, because there are things I did that I'm like, I wouldn't do that again. And that's a really great sign to know that I've grown and that I have moved past that. And I look back at every version of Lily and I'm so grateful for her, because she is what got me to where I am now. I literally would not be here if she didn't make the choices she did at those times. And she was doing the best with what she knew, literally doing the best with what she knew and what was available to her. Because what other decision did I really have? It doesn't mean afterward where you go, okay, we could have, responded differently. But to give love to those versions of ourselves allows for the acceptance and integration, because it says, instead of you get pushed in the closet, you get a seat right next to me, sister. You get to sit right here because you're a part of me. And it's about me being okay with you being here, because I am not going to treat you the same way I was treated, because the only reason I would ever shame you is because I believe shaming someone is okay, because that's how I was treated. And we cannot heal the same way in which we were wounded. We can't. And this is what we try to do. We say, well, that part's not allowed. You're doing the same thing that other people did to you. You're perpetuating the same life. So it's actually not about doing anything. It's about softening and releasing into every single part of you. And I truly believe until we can fully do that and integrate that, merging is the big thing here. Merging every part of you, every decision you've ever made, every action. Because this is one of the most beautiful, famous lines of Peter Crone. I'm going to butcher it. I'm like, it's the greatest line and I'm going to butcher it. Things happened the way they did and it couldn't be any other way because it wasn't. And that's reality. That's literally accepting reality. Can I be okay with the way things happen? Because actually I don't have any other choice, because I'm just resisting reality. And when we're in resistance, we're suffering. Mm-hmm. And until we are open and in full surrender and flow, we can't go anywhere. And we're stuck. And we're sandwiched with pain and fear. And of course, we don't know where to go. We don't trust anything. And there's no acceptance of where we are.
Yeah. Yeah, that quote I continue to come back to time and time again every time that I logically cannot understand something, whether that's something in the now or something in the past that's happening different than how I want it to be, which is life. And it is, I really do believe that we have to get to this point of choice. It's like, are we going to choose to entertain the what ifs and the should haves and the shouldn'ts that keep us in resistance and cause us to feel so much more pain? Or are we going to find that deep surrender and acceptance of life? And it requires this deep trust in the way that life knows better than we do with our egoic minds. It really does come to this point of just, what is my other option? I either sit here and fight this and I will never know why, I will never understand it fully, or I can just choose to say, you know what? Not bypass the experience. Like, I love how you said, go back and feel it. Allow yourself to actually be with those parts so that we can integrate it and move forward. But then from there, we have the choice of how are you going to choose to interpret this? That is, to me, our willpower is like, and that changes your entire experience.
For sure. Yeah. And on that as well, the triggers that we experience are those versions of ourselves trying to be held. That's literally what's happening, because we're reacting to life based on who's running the show. We're not reacting, we're not handling life that's happening in front of us. We're reacting to what that's reminding us of, which are those versions of ourselves, which is why the triggers will show you where you're not liberated, because it's showing you the version of yourself you still have to integrate, because it's not about pushing them away. It's about bringing them up to where you are, allowing them. This was, I think, a line by Michael Singer, but he was saying how God wants to take it all from you. You're getting triggered because God wants it. God wants to take it from you, but you're fighting to hold on to the worst things that ever happened to you. And you're living your life avoiding the worst things that ever happened to you and trying to make sure that everything it's like, it's all limited. It's all limited. And, you know, the future, all these what ifs, it's all based on these horrible things that happened to us. So by nature, when we're saying, what if this happens? If we were to wipe our minds completely clean, we would have no fear of what's going to happen, because we have nothing to base that on. We have no fear. We have nothing to base it on. But all of that is based on us running away from pain. It's like, how far do you think you're going to get with that one? So it's really about recognizing that this is a part of me that is begging to be heard finally. And the only person that's ever going to do that is you. And that's why I believe in this work so much, because no one's coming to save you. In the most loving way, nobody is coming to save you. And the best thing is you're the only one that's able to do that. And when you really step into that, I'm the one that's going to do this. And that is hard for a lot of people to swallow, for sure, because they want to blame all these other things, because they also don't believe that they're capable of it. That's why they're not doing it. They don't believe they're capable. That's why they're looking for other people to save them. They're waiting for life to just get easy. They're waiting for, you know, the situation, the opportunity. And they're the first people to say, oh, it's easy for you to say, or wouldn't it be nice? Because they think life's going to come save them, and it's not. And those are the people that need this message more than anything. And those are the people that are going to get triggered the most, for sure. Because those are the people that have the least belief in themselves. Those are the people that really think life is against them. And those are the people that need the love the most. Which is why I will repeat this message till the day that I die. And why I dropped everything in my life to go all in on this. Because once you're here and you understand, when you let go of that, and all this is about love, truly loving myself and recognizing everything that's in the way. Because loving myself is the baseline. I just have to get rid of the stories that won't allow me to do that. You're free, baby. You can do whatever you want. And once you're there, all you want to do is get people there. That's why everyone's saying the same thing. Because once you're there, you understand there's no competition. There's no, it's for this person. No, it's for everyone. It's endless. It's limitless. It's ever expansive. The universe proves that to us. It is an infinite expanding being. You are part of that. You just believe that you're not. And to bring people in that space, when you wake someone up or you flip them into that world, you can literally feel it. You can feel them stepping into the power of what it means for them to be a human being. And that is why this work is so powerful. And it literally changes your life. Literally.
Do you have any practical tips or practices that people can start with in order to go back and revisit some parts of themselves or parts of their lives that they may still be hanging on to? Like, how does someone start with that process if they are hearing this and they're like, I want to do that, but how do I, like, do I have to go into a deep meditation? Do I journal? What do I do?
Yeah. So this is a big one. And this is what all the greatest teachers and mentors will say. Go through your day and see where you get triggered. That is where you start. You see what is triggering you, because there is your moment. And that is where you say, there's my limitation. There's my edge. you get met with that. And this is what I have all my clients do. Keep track of what these triggers are, because you'll notice there is an undercurrent with all of them, and they might fall into different pockets. But not only that, we want to take it a step further, is what's happening and why we're in resistance are because of our minds. They are fantastic things. They can bring us to the moon. They can create things to bring us to other planets. And they're really good at trying to think our way out of feeling. And that is where the issue is, because we are sentimental beings. We're designed to feel. That's why it's in the body. You can feel it. We have two types of memory. We have implicit and explicit. Explicit is, for anyone that's listening, is if you had toast and eggs for breakfast, that's something you can remember. But because our brain and our body, its main objective is to survive. There are some things that at one point were so incredibly traumatizing for us. And maybe not even it doesn't have to be capital T trauma, but something we were unable to process, something that was unable to move through. So we store it, and we can feel those things in our body, which is why when we feel anxiety, a lot of times we feel it in our chest, sadness, or a lot of people when they feel like they can't speak their truth, there's a tightness in their throat when we dig it down to that's what's actually going on. Or here in the solar plexus or stomach, sometimes tension in the head. There's places where these memories are stored in our body. We also store them in our hips. We store them in our, traps, in our lower back, all these places. But a lot of times with these emotions, we can really feel them majority in this area. So when you get that trigger, when this happens, and this is why I say start with the small things. That video that you saw, I wasn't talking about when you're at Thanksgiving dinner and your mom starts talking about your weight and don't be bothered by it. That is like PhD level stuff. And that also, I think a lot of people will take that message of like, don't feel anything. And that's absolutely not what's going on. The objective with a place that we want to go is life happens and a situation's happening outside of us. But the issue, what happens is we make that situation mean something about us, because what's happening is it's triggering the part of ourselves that's trying to move through. But we say, oh my God, that thing is making me feel so bad. It's making me feel so anxious. It's actually not the situation. It's reflecting back to you where you're not free and what you need to deal with. So that's why we say, start with the small things, right? Start with the weather. Notice where you start complaining with things. Oh, it's raining. This sucks. Or what? Oh, stop. Pause. What's going on here? I'm feeling really irritated. Awesome. Where are you feeling this irritation? I always say, place your hands on your body where you're feeling it. A lot of times it's chest, stomach. Beautiful. Breathe and relax. Because what's happening is your body does not feel safe to feel right now. So the practice is to start training your body. It is safe to release. And I always say, like, imagining these energetic hands, taking them away. Because what's happening is you're holding and you're squeezing and you're trying to keep the emotion come down. Like if I were to say, Lily, try not to feel any emotion in this moment. Nothing, sadness, nothing. You would have to go, you'd have to like put some type of constraint on yourself. We do that over and over and over and over again. Why do you think we feel that tension in our body? Why do you think we can literally pinpoint where that is? So when that comes in, you're going to notice the tension in your body. You're going to notice where that's being held. So the only place to start feeling safe and practicing safety is in this moment right now. How can I soften into this? Let me remove myself if I have to. Let me go be by myself and breathe into it. Just breathe. You're frustrated. You're irritated. Someone's driving slow in front of you. Hey, there's literally nothing we can do about that. There's nothing, unless you want to zoom past them and do whatever. But you being irritated and mad at them is doing nothing but causing you anxiety, causing you anger. They can't hear you. They can't hear a single word that you're saying. Who is this benefiting right now? 100% cost, 0% benefit. That's a great sign to say, okay, it's time to let go of this. So relaxing into that. And that's where the perspective change comes in. Once we've allowed ourselves to say, okay, I notice I'm getting irritated. Okay. You know what? I can listen to my favorite podcast right now. Perfect. Great. Or you can suffer and you can be angry at them and you can resist what's going on because it's the resistance to what's going on. The difference is being open, allowing yourself to feel and finding the God in every single moment, because The issue, what we do is we say, God is sunsets, God is babies laughing, it's puppies, it's when I'm, but the driver in front of me is not God. And I'm screw this. Like I want to be anywhere else but here. What if you could be in flow with what's going on with you right now? The driver's slow. Okay, great. We're going to get there 5 minutes later. Okay, cool. So what? You know, and it's not about not allowing yourself to feel. It's actually allowing the whole experience to touch you. And we notice, and this is the beautiful thing, this is something in yoga, but these are states of bliss. Bliss is available to you in every single moment. You're just waiting for things to keep you open or close you. And then certain situations like, you know, I got there on time, perfect. I got there 5 minutes early and they gave me a coffee. Oh my God, I feel great. But let's change the situation. You're 5 minutes late. You know, your jacket's getting caught on all the doorknobs. You spilled your coffee. These are the moments where we get irritated and we start reacting to life. So starting with these lower hanging fruits, like Michael Singer really talks about, and allowing yourself to just relax, 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 and breathe. Start there. Don't start at Thanksgiving with your family. Don't start with the relationship that's, you know, you're seeing the same issues. You're going to get triggered and you're not going to know how to respond to that, because wounds created in relationship can only be healed in relationship. You're not going to be triggered relationship wounds when you're by yourself, which is why when people are single, they're like, I'm free. And then they go in a relationship, they go, oh my God, this is what happens. So I know there's a lot of different steps and levels with that. But that's where I would say is see where you, so one, go through life and see where you're getting triggered. Notice where you're complaining, where you're getting upset, where fear is coming up, where you're getting anxious. Connecting to the feeling, releasing, relaxing, breathing, being, and then change your perspective. Flip. What is something that you can, what's one good thing that you can do in this situation? Maybe you can't flip the perspective. What's a positive action you can take in this moment? And then that doesn't mean you don't have to handle life, right? But I want you to do that from a state of clarity, and you're not reacting to this, and you're handling what's going on from a state of clarity.
Yeah, that's like the, you know, I think also Peter Kern always says there's like awareness and practice. Those are kind of the two steps, right? And it's the noticing when you're even in a triggered state, I think is a huge one. And then the practice, like this isn't a one and done. Like you said, this is something that you do over and over and over again, because we are beings of repetition. That's how the subconscious gets rewired. That's how you become, quote unquote, who you are for yourself, because you've repeated thoughts, beliefs, actions, and gotten similar results. And so it is, to me, that's such a pattern interrupt in that moment of noticing how you normally react to life, right? And feeling like a victim, whether it's for whatever reason, and then choosing to take a deep breath, changing the physical reaction in your body, I think allows us the space to then choose a different perspective. And I always invite my clients and myself as well to think about, like, what is the story that I'm telling myself right now? Mm-hmm. You know, this always happens to me, or, oh, I can't ever get it right, or I'm just not good enough. And when we notice that, it's like, oh, okay, now I notice how my body's responding to that. And it's like those in the moment pattern interrupts are so huge when we do them consistently. And just to kind of come full circle, you know, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the work that we probably both do with clients is, you know, I think that's a great place to start. And then if we do want to take it all the way back, it's like, when's the first time you felt that? And that's how we then arrive at these older parts of ourselves, right? To then meet them there and hopefully reintegrate pieces that we are still shaming and pushing away and avoiding. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, because that's the place that we're trying to get to. Because the trigger is the smoke, right? That's the top thing that's going on. But when we bring it back and we connect to the body, because sometimes the mind won't let you go there. So connecting to the body is another key and another gateway to connecting to that. And when we can ask ourselves, when was the first time that I felt this? You will get a memory. You will get something. Even if it's a couple of years ago, you'll be able to trace it back, because that you've been stuck energetically in time, and you've been reacting to life based from that place, trying to protect that version of yourself. That's really what's been going on. And it's about liberating that part of yourself. So when we can recognize what's being triggered, we can see, oh, this is what's going on. We can trace it back to that version of ourselves and rewrite the story, right? Because like we said at the beginning, we're linguistic beings. There's actually nothing that's saying you're not good enough. There's actually no metric that's saying you're not good enough. There's no metric that's saying that you're inadequate. There's no metric that's saying that you need to earn love. That's a story that you tell yourself. And when we can recognize that, we become so powerful, because then we recognize it's a choice to let go of it, or it's a choice to hold on to it and fight for it. Because we know the life that perpetuates, because we have the story that it's difficult for this new world to step into. But I would argue it's more difficult to perpetuate a life that you feel unfulfilled, that you feel broke, that leaves you in half-assed relationships, that your health is, you're not in a complete state of vitality. I would argue that's really hard, and that's way more hard. And because people can do hard things. If you're living a life like that, you prove to yourself you can do a difficult thing, because you do it every single day, and you choose that every single day. And when you realize that, then you can say, wait, if I know I can do that difficult thing, I'd rather choose that difficult thing that actually gives me a gift on the other side. And when we can get a human being to that place of choice, I don't want to get in their way. It's over. They're changing everything. It doesn't mean that they won't be met with difficulty, but a human being connected to their heart is unstoppable.
And the last kind of theme and topic that I want to get into is, before we start wrapping things up, it's kind of a two-parted topic, but you've created videos on both of these in terms of navigating change and how, and you mentioned this earlier too, so it's kind of a full circle moment, but really when we start to ask for growth, ask for the better relationship, for more money, for things to change in our lives, for us to change, at first, things are going to fall apart. It's going to feel like everything's crumbling, and it's in those moments. And I think this applies so beautifully to the year that we just had. The year of the snake was that. It was a dissolving illusion. So it's a lot falling away, so that we can then look at the pieces and rebuild something more beautiful that is more true to us. But I think that in between moment and phase of the crab shell losing its crab to find a bigger one is where a lot of us can revert to old patterns, right? And get stuck again. And so talk to us about that phase. And if you want to wrap that into life is happening right now, which is another video that I loved by you, because it really is. It's like, okay, well, what are we going to choose to do right now? How can we actually look forward and create the new and allow life to show us where we're meant to go? If you want to just riff on whatever comes to mind for that.
So I have actually never heard the crab looking for the bigger crab shell, but that's a great way to explain it, because it's a vulnerability. You're in this shell that actually you can only grow as big as that shell. And there's a soft, I think of Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob when he loses his shell and he's like this pink, fluffy little thing. And he's soft and he's open to the world to get hurt. And that's the place where we're afraid of, right? That's change right there, where we say, if I have the courage to let go of this old life and have the trust that something greater will come to me, I need to be in this uncomfortable place of waiting, right? Because the only thing that holds that place is trust. So we can't receive with our hands full. We have to let go. We have to, because trust is the initiation. Trust is the obedience, right? Is the obedience. And it's actually the step towards and knowing that there's something greater, right? And that also comes from worth. This is where that perpetuating story can really stop us is, well, I'm going to hold on to this because this is the best I'm going to get. Why would something greater come to me? And that's where we stay stuck. So this middle place of vulnerability where everything's falling apart, because when we claim something that is greater, we have to know and we have to kind of agree and be aware that everything else is going to fall apart. And when we can look at that and change that perspective, when everything is falling apart, I've gotten to a place of changing my identity. I feel like so many, like stepping into new versions of myself where things have absolutely fallen apart, where I notice things are happening and I go, okay, it's happening again. It doesn't mean that get dysregulated or I tell myself the stories. But this is the thing. Being a human being, you're here to evolve. You're never going to get to a place where you stop evolving. And people where they are, where you want to be, they're scared too. They just know that that's a requirement. They know that the fear is actually their North Star of where they're trying to go, because that's expansion. That's a world that they don't know. And that place of vulnerability of that life can hurt me. That's the same as what we were talking about before, of this projected past onto the future of, well, what if that happens again? Well, what if it's greater than you've ever known? What if it's the best decision you've ever made in your life? Because that's just as real as the worst thing is happening. And I know for sure, I could even feel in my body when I said it. It feels completely different. And the state in which we create things is the precursor to what we are creating. If we're going to create something from a state of ease, that's going to bring more. It's the law of resonance. You go into a store and you play a C chord. You can literally try this. All the guitars in the store are going to play a C chord. You play a D chord, they're all going to play a D chord. But you got to play the C chord first. You got to hit that button. And life has to resonate. It literally has to resonate. And the thing about life is happening right now, you don't get to a place where you just get to start living life. Or like, life is happening right now in this moment. And this reverts back to this aligns to the other thing we were saying before of, we believe we have to do something or get to a certain place to feel something. But all that's creating is the feeling, the lack of safety of being here right now, which is why presence, and this is every great teacher, there's a million books on it. A human in the now, a human truly in the present right now is the most powerful human being, because they're not in resistance to anything. They're not, I should be here, I should be over there, why am I not here? This is going to happen when you're everywhere else but here. You're literally everywhere else energetically but here. And like we were saying before, we've only been here right now. That's the funny thing about time. We relate to time as past and future, but we're only here right now. And how manifestation works, and I don't like using that word sometimes because it's obviously a buzzword, but it's feeling safe to step into that version of yourself. That's what that is. Because everything that you desire that's calling you, it's available. It's happening right now. You just don't feel safe to accept it. You don't feel safe to step onto that path, because either you know, because you're aware that it's going to be difficult to get there for sure. And it could also be that you don't believe you're worthy of receiving that. You don't believe it's there, because why would it be there for you? And these come from the different lenses and everything that human beings all exist in. But that's available right now. If you believe you have to do something to feel peace, you're going to be chasing peace for the rest of your life, because you've made it not exist right now. Now's the only moment that what are you going to pop in the future one day? You're going to end up there? No, you're only ever going to be here right now. So when you can remove the idea you have to do anything to feel anything at all, you're available to it all. You're not in resistance. You're in full surrender to life, and you are in the present moment, and you are a powerful, I don't know if I can curse, I'm going to say effing human being.
Yeah.
And that's what we're all trying to get. And that's the beautiful thing about all of this is it's all available right now. Life is happening right now. And because you believe you got to be somewhere else, you're not living and presently and experiencing the God in every moment, because you believe it's with some experience. You believe it's with some relationship. You believe it's with the job. You believe it's with the business. You believe it's with all of this stuff. How disempowering is that? You're taking a part of who you are and you're placing it anywhere else but here right now. That's why you feel stuck. That's why you feel whatever these feelings are, because you're disconnected from yourself. So to remove these stories and remove these ideas, that's where you start. And you start seeing where that's shown back to you. And you have to have the courage to face that and to be honest with yourself and look in the most truthful mirror, which is yourself. Literally, life is going to show you who you are all the time. Do you have the courage to look at it? And do you have the courage to face it? and continue to stay on that path, because you will be challenged every single day. You really will. And that is where it becomes a choice.
I really think that that's why we end up missing out on our lives, is because we're so convinced that what we want is out there in the future. And it's,
what a shame.
Yeah, it's a practice. Like it's one thing to say this, but it's another thing to devote yourself to living that way, to living in the now, despite how much you think it shouldn't be, or you can't have it. And it's that practice of remembering that the only reason we want things is because of how we think we're going to feel. And then, can we practice feeling that now? And if we practice that and we embody that, then like you said, we become a frequency match to what we actually are desiring to see externally. That's manifestation, put simply, right?
Right.
And it's not easy, but it is simple. I always say that.
Yeah. and the great thing, anyone that's listening or watching this, something practical for you to really feel and embody the truth of this. Thinking of that thing that you still have in your mind that you are like convinced, because I know you are, of, well, once I have that thing, then I'm going to feel that. Let's say it's a relationship. Okay. Once I'm in that loving relationship, I'm going to feel so loved and safe, and feel into that. Like, what does that really feel like? Really feel into what is that going to feel like once you have that relationship? You can feel that in your body. You can, like, you're tapping into that right now. You're literally tapping into the availability of that right now. And if you remove the idea that you have to do anything at all, like, let's just remove the idea you need the relationship for that love, then what becomes available? The love, everything, because you remove the idea you have to do something to do it. Do that with everything. The job, once I have the business, then I'm going to feel full of purpose. What's that going to feel like? Feeling conviction, knowing peace. Well, I mean, you tell me what you just felt thinking about that. That's available to you right now. You connect to that every single day. You remove the idea, because it's not about that you can't have that. I want you to create from a place of everythingness, because you're limitless there. Then the plan's greater than what you've made out to be in your head. You think your plan's greater than the thing that created you and brought you here? Really? I mean, you can think whatever you want, but I think that's crazy. I mean, I just popped up one here and I was just living my life. There's a plan that is greater for you. And you were chosen for that plan. You, specifically. The being that created all the stars in the galaxies created you and gave you a plan and gave you a purpose and gave you everything that you were given in your life, so you can transcend and alchemize into your greatest gifts and create the greatest life you've ever known. You. I mean, when you feel into that and you create from that place and you recognize all the things that are in the way of that, chat to you, chat to me. Tell me what's happened in your life. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I love it. I recently heard, like, for the example of relationships, and we'll start wrapping this up, but the reason that, especially in a new relationship, you feel so great, part of it is because when you're with that person momentarily, temporarily, it removes the self-judgment that you usually carry around who you are and, around yourself. And that's the only thing that blocks you from feeling that when you're not with the person or when you are single, and so it's just, I think it just is a beautiful way to really put into perspective what we're saying of the feelings you desire, that we all desire, are here. They are sourced from within. No one is getting into your physical body and your heart and making you feel something, right? We're still influenced by the outside world, and that's a beautiful thing, but we have the power to source our experience from within. And it's a practice, because we were never taught that. Yeah. We were never taught that. We were taught the opposite. And so it's going to take some repetition and some devotion, really, to remember and to embody that. But I mean, it's absolutely possible. And thank you so much. I can feel your embodiment of this work and your passion of it for it. And it's inspiring and it's beautiful. And I think it comes through, and I think it speaks for itself too with your social media growth lately. So, I mean, thank you so much for doing this work, for inspiring all of us, and for coming onto the show. And I'd love for you to share how people can connect with you and work with you if they're interested in that.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much. It's talking about this stuff, you can't shut up about it when you really.
I know. I'm like, we could keep going for another hour.
I'm like, yeah, we need a cutoff for this for sure. No, but it's always a gift to share what I've learned from my greatest teachers and to take all of this with you. But to connect, you can find me on Instagram at You and Lily. You can find me on TikTok at You and Lily Marie. Whoever has You and Lily on TikTok, I'm going to find you.
Wait, is your middle name Marie?
Is your middle name Marie?
Stop. That's actually fucking hilarious.
That is hilarious. Oh my God. We just need to change your name, or I have to change my name legally.
Yeah. By the way, Lily's podcast name is Back to You, right?
Yes.
Which is the same meaning as Home to Self, too.
Literally. So it's no. It's that's the other place you can find me on my podcast, Back to You. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcast. What is it? Podcast? Apple?
Yeah.
You know what it is.
Podcast. I don't think anyone actually knows what that's called, but
I know.
We'll go with that.
I also, anyways, you can find me there. If you know, you know. And then on YouTube, it's on there as well. So, and then I obviously have my coaching that I do, my one-on-one coaching, where I go into this in depth with all of my clients. So yeah, so it's been so awesome being on the show and chatting with you, Lily. I'm so glad that we connected in this way. Thank you again so much for this gift. Seriously.
It's life always dropping people in my path, and I'm just like, this is fucking magical, and thank you.
What a life you live.
Right? It's like, if you look for the magic, it is there.
Always.
And that's why it's like, this is the power of perspective. The power of your mind is you literally can create heaven or hell. It's a state of mind, and it's not easy, but it is possible. And it doesn't require you to, like, you don't have to have a certain amount of money. You don't have to be anything special. Like, everyone has the potential, and it quite literally changes your entire life because you are creating it through your own experience. And so, yeah, I love chatting about all of this. So thank you. And I will include all of your links in the show notes below for people to be able to access. Other than that, thank you all for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Go reach out to Lily, and we'll talk to you soon.